City Council. We'll call the meeting to order, and to begin, call your attention to the Open Meetings Act posted here in the City Council chambers. If you now please join me for rising for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Granquist.
Here.
Lange.
Here.
Merrill.
Here.
Weeblehouse.
Here.
Murin. Here. Jackson.
Here.
Clausen.
Here.
File.
Here.
Okay, with that, I would look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion and second. If no discussion, roll call, please.
Granquist.
Yay.
Lange.
Yay.
Merrill.
Yay.
Weeblehouse.
Yay.
Murin. Jackson.
Yay.
Clausen.
Yay.
File.
Yay.
All council members voting in the affirmative. Motion carries.
Next, I would consider a motion to approve the full agenda.
So moved. Second, Your Honor.
Motion and second. If no discussion, roll call, please.
Granquist.
Yay.
Lange.
Yay.
Merrill.
Yay.
Weeblehouse.
Yay.
Murin. Jackson. Clausen.
Yay.
File.
Yay.
All council members voting in the affirmative. Motion carries.
Okay, that takes us to item number 8 on the agenda. Look for a motion to discuss and take possible action on the process for reopening various city facilities and services.
I'll make the motion, Your Honor.
Motion and second. And to kick off discussion, Andy Colvin, our city administrator.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Well, I'll try to keep this relatively brief. We can go into as much detail, take as many questions as you'd like this evening. I really appreciate you calling the special meeting here to get together and meet like this. Well, a lot of challenges have come before the city, as we've seen with all of our individuals and citizens in Norfolk and our businesses here over the last number of months, and the city's no different. And I think I wanted to have this meeting tonight to talk about some of the bigger items we have revolving around opening some of our facilities. I think some of those are easier. We can go into the details about what the library offers, our parks, City Hall, different things like that. But we've tried to put out some information on our website and on social media and into the local news to announce some of those openings. So we can go into some of those details if you like. Our staff is here. We can answer as many questions as you'd like us to. But I think the big topic of discussion for this evening would be the decision on Aquaventure. Now, you might be asking why the decision to open Aquaventure and nothing else, because everything else was handled pretty much administratively. Well, there's a cost to Aquaventure that's different to quantify than it is a city park or another facility. And certainly the safety aspects that come into there where we are today versus a number of months ago are much different. So as we've seen some of the restrictions from the pandemic being loosened in Nebraska, some questions have come up about to what degree do we want to look at a facility like Aquaventure, where we have a higher capacity and we can hold a lot of patrons in to enjoy our aquatic center we have here with restrictions. And I can go into some of those restrictions and go through that. I do have a PowerPoint. If I can get the screen on, I can share some of those highlights of details. But I guess before we get too far into that, is there any questions you'd want to know more about regarding the library or our parks or anything more specific on that than what we've put out? A lot of it has been pretty straightforward, but we're certainly able to go into some of those details if you like.
So Andy, for the public information and for those who may be watching, do you want to just touch on some of the opening dates on, this place here, from what I understand, and the library, and a little bit
Sure.
that way?
Well, I'm going to let Jessica handle the library when I saw her walk in. Just to give a little bit of a little highlight of what the library has. Some of the programming is a little more detailed, maybe than what I'm able to recall off the top of my head. So I can just let her give a brief summary.
Sure. So we reopened the drive-through window on June 1st, and so we're doing material delivery through request. People can just swing through the drive-through and pick that up. And then we're planning on opening the building on Monday, July 15th, so a week from today. With capacity, we would limit the building to that 25% capacity. So we're asking people to just stay for 30 minutes. So we have a 30-minute time limit on each visit, so people can come and go and more people can use the facility. We're asking that one person per household come at a time if possible, and then if children do need to attend with their parents, that we ask that they stay within an arm's length, that direct parent supervision. And then we don't have any seating available or anything like that at this time. So kind of open and a limited basis to come get materials, do a quick computer session if you need to do something online, and then and that's what we're going to start with as our reopening.
Jessica, I have a question. Oh, Jim, are you finished?
Go ahead.
Okay. Last year, did you keep track of what your daily average capacity was, by chance?
On average, it's about 350 a day.
Okay.
I would say off the top of my head.
And what is your occupancy rated at?
277.
277, okay.
So, so our 25%, we can have 69 people in the building at a time.
Okay.
So on average, we have about 58 to 60 per hour over the course of the whole year, if you take the whole year average. And summer is always a little busier than our winter months. But we don't think we're going to have too much of a problem of going over that 69 people per hour, especially if we get people to come in and use that 30-minute time limit and kind of just come and get their materials and then leave room for someone else.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Does capacity include the meeting rooms too in
It
that total
doesn't.
number?
It does not. Those are counted separately, and we're not opening those right now. In this first phase, we're just opening the main part of the library.
And am I correct in that this description of capacity includes or does not include staff?
It does not.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
And Jessica, the computer labs and technology will be accessible during this time, right?
Right now, just the public computer lab, because with our maker space, you need more than 30 minutes to do something meaningful in there. So just the public computer lab, so if people need to print things off or do a quick application, it'll be available for that.
Okay.
And this capacity rating is based on the DHMs from the state, correct?
Right, so the capacity, and we had Terry Zwiebel, our fire, come and look at that rating and make sure that that was accurate, and he agreed it was, and we, so yeah, so 25% of that, 277.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you, Jessica.
Sure.
And Andy, while we're at it, why don't we talk a little bit about some of our park reopenings, restrooms being open, sports fields, those matters.
Sure. Well, for the most part, our parks were open last week. They went through that process of opening. That includes the restrooms. That includes the playgrounds. And so we'll start to see, I guess, pretty much regular use of our parks. We did post signage appropriately showing what is cleaned, what is not cleaned, and the schedule for that. And as far as our organized sports go, if I did Pat to help me out, it is June. Pat, you want to just come up here real quick, help me out with the dates?
June 2nd, they can start practice against each other and stuff, and the 18th is when
18th.
official games are supposed to start.
Okay.
So June 18th would be for the games to start at our sports fields.
Very good. And City Hall accessibility?
City Hall right now, as far as the front main office for utility billing is the same, status quo right now. Our permits office is open, so for contractors and other citizens that would like to get a building permit and get some help from our planning and development department, that is open to that first entryway to come into the counter. We are working out a plan for the utility billing to open to be a little bit different than what it was before, but we'll offer more service than what we have now to get that traffic that could start coming into the building with some limitations. And we'll have that plan ready to go, we hope, very shortly.
Okay, very good. Unless there are any other questions about other facilities, I think we can move forward with the
Sure.
water park discussion.
Well, I'm having trouble getting my screen up. Oh, I guess. Did I do something? Well, I put together a few slides of a PowerPoint to summarize a little and highlight some of the components of opening AquaVenture. We did come prepared tonight, staff did, with a plan to open AquaVenture. We have had a good discussion and have had conversations with the Elkhorn-Logan Valley Public Health Department. We have looked through the directed health measures and put together our plan according to those rules. So it is possible, and I'm sharing up on the screen, if you'll look, there's some financial information to this. And this is, I just want to make sure that we know what this entails. Obviously, the cost to operate Aquaventure as it is in offering all the amenities and features of it, that cost doesn't change. There's an hourly rate that we calculate to make that happen and to get that down. That includes lifeguards, it includes keeping the lights on, the water flowing, all those things that come to there that you see listed. And so obviously with some of the extra work that will need to be done by staff to open Aquaventure for extra cleaning, social distancing, monitoring patrons, checking people in and out, and some of those limitations that we have, it is going to increase the cost just because we do have to still keep the facility safe and have the appropriate number of lifeguards based on the capacity that we have and the features that are open. So a lot of those costs don't change, and they've actually increased from what we can calculate. So what you'll see here is a breakdown. So your total expenses, what we estimate, is $397,937 for this season. Now that's the whole season, figuring 7 days a week times 8 weeks. So, and you got to bear in mind that there's a difference between 7 and 8 weeks because there's going to be weeks where we're not getting money from patrons for the revenue side because there is some time in there that we're not open. So, depending on our attendance, and when we look at daily attendance, that is the maximum approximately of what we can have. Right now, with the 25% rule under the directed health measures, we're only allowed to have about 330 people. That's not including lifeguards and staff. They're outside that number. So now you're reducing the numbers of people you can have in there. And so to ensure that we have as many families as we can and individuals can enjoy our Aquaventure, we're breaking this down into two sessions, 2 3.5-hour sessions with an hour in between for some cleaning and just to get the facility ready for the next group. So that's figuring this in at a daily attendance of 650, and now that's with both sessions. So adding up to 320 to 30 approximately people going in, and if that's maxing it out. So now you go into the different numbers. You see daily attendance of 650, 500 people, and 300 people. It's going to vary, just like the weather does, on how many people are going to come to Aquaventure. So we've prepared different scenarios for how much money could be have to be lost, so to speak, versus what it costs to operate it and the amount of revenue that you're bringing in to pay for that. On a typical year, the city, best case scenario, we hope to make back money on staffing costs and some of those other costs related to that. Overall, you know, it's probably comes pretty close to breaking even, but not always, depending on how much use the facility gets. So this year will be no different in terms of those things. But we did just want to provide this so the council can see the shortfall that we would project. Again, it's anybody's guess as to actually what this would be. But we did think it's relevant to the conversation so we all know what it is that we could be facing here. So we did take a look at some of our sister communities in our region, and I'll do here in one of these. Columbus, I've heard, is somewhat up in the air right now on whether they're opening. I've heard they may be reconsidering their decision to close again tonight, but I don't know what will happen with that. Sioux City, Vermilion, Fremont, Hastings, Scottsbluff, Omaha, Papillion, Sioux Falls, their aquatic centers, to my knowledge, they've closed for the season. Now, some of their neighborhood pools are open. Those have much, much smaller capacity with a lot fewer restrictions in place just because the numbers of people you can possibly have in there are much less. And they're smaller, you can control the activity that goes on in there so that you can comply with the directed health measures. So you are seeing some of that. Lincoln, for instance, is opening up their neighborhood pools. But specifically, this list here is for aquatic centers that are similar to Norfolk. York is opening theirs. Their max occupancy possible in their facility is 700 people, so it's about half the size occupancy-wise as Aquaventure. and they have decided to open theirs for this season as well, following much the same plan and rules that we've provided here for you. So I will go through here some work that staff put a lot of hard work into this. We have the full plan that's probably a lot more detail, and just in this draft format that was sent to council. We can certainly provide that for anybody who would like to see that. And we'll be refining that as we go. And I think it's important to note that whatever plan we have in place now, it's really irrelevant specifically what plan is approved. I don't think we're asking for a specific plan to be approved, because that could change next week if directed health measures change, if direction from the governor changes. I suspect we're not going to call a council meeting every single time we do that. So we will just make sure that we're in compliance with any measures that would change, whether they be more strict or less strict. So we'll make sure this stays fluid. But we have worked with the Elkhorn Logan Valley Public Health Department. We have looked through the directed health measures, and we think we've come up with a pretty workable plan to open the facility. So fees, we propose to have a flat rate fee of $5 per person per session. Children aged 3 and under are still going to be free of charge. Right now, you can buy a group pass, you can buy a household pass, you can buy, different rates for different ages. We're just sticking with a straight flat rate. We feel that's simplest to manage that. And the $5 is less than the lowest rate that we have right now, which I believe is $6 at the lowest rate for a daily pass. And again,
Quick
there's going to be...
question, Andy, before
Yeah,
you
go ahead, Jim.
further. I know from driving by the sign, we were trying to pre-sell season passes as early as Christmas time that way. What happens to the ones that have purchased those?
They will get refunded, or they can apply it toward, we're gonna use like a gift card, so they can use it anytime, or we'll totally refund it. We didn't really have that many this year, so,
Not that many,
So-
500, 1,000, 100?
no.
Okay.
No, less than 20.
Oh, okay. Non-issue then.
Yeah, so there's not too much work to try to take care of those folks that may have already purchased. And again, the sessions, there's going to be 2 sessions. The first session would go from 11:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. with an hour break to clean and sanitize the most commonly used surfaces that we're able to take care of from 3 to 4. And then it will reopen again from 4 to 7:30. That's 7 days a week. Obviously, weather permitting, all those other rules will still apply for Aquaventure. Lightning and thunderstorm warnings, things like that could close it, or if the temperature drops to a certain level, could close it as well. Check-in, check-out procedures. This one is important to discuss, I think. This is something that we have worked with the health department on, that we have to do as part of submitting a plan to them for approval. All patrons, when they check in, will be required to provide name and phone number, and staff will record the time checked in and time checked out of Aquaventure. This piece is fairly important, and I think good to keep in mind, because this goes back to contact tracing, which is something that we need to have built into our plan. So that should there be a case of COVID-19 at Aquaventure, or an individual or staff or whomever might have that, we need to have, the health department needs to be able to trace that somewhere. And the way to do that is to be able to get names and phone numbers so that they can individually interview those folks to really drill down and focus on that exposure potential.
Andy, and that's required by the DHMs in the state?
Yes, our health department requires us to do that.
All right, thank you.
In order to limit wait times and encourage social distancing, staff will have tables set up to assist with check-in and ensure social distancing of patrons. So for instance, you'll have a table that will collect information, liability waivers, things like that, paperwork, and then you'll have a second table to take care of the payment aspect. So we can just keep people moving, people aren't getting stacked and lined up. We're going to try to reduce that as much as we can and keep things moving. And separate entrances and exits will be maintained. So after the initial check-in, where all registers will be open to take payments, then we'd have one side for exit and one side for entrance. Social distancing rules would apply, the 6-foot rule. Groups of 6 or less, you can be in a group and be closer within that. But any more than that, you need to separate for 6 feet. So we will have our floors, stairways, other areas that we're able to marked accordingly to show where that 6-foot mark is. Again, some areas we are going to be able to do that, some we're not. A lot of this is a work in progress, and we're going to try to do the best we can. But we will do that to the best we can. In addition to signage, we'll have signage posted everywhere so people are reminded and know the rules and what's happening at Aquaventure. So pool facility and use, there's a lot to this, but I tried to summarize this as best I could. All patrons will be required to shower in their swimwear with soap prior to entering the pool. This is to try to keep the chlorine that's in the pool as with as much ability to fight any bacteria, viruses, that instead of any dirt or something that would come off of somebody's body as they go into the pool. That's an important one that technically people should be doing anyway. That's why we have rules to shower before entering the pool, but in this case it will be enforced to make sure that people do that in their swimwear before entering the pool. This will help keep the chlorine at an acceptable level and keep everybody safer. Face masks are recommended until you enter the pool area. Both the body and the tube sides will be open with appropriate markings to ensure social distancing while you're in line. Tubes will be disinfected when returned to the corral and prior to reuse, so there will be staff present to help disinfect. And you'll have a stack of clean tubes and tubes that can be returned and to be cleaned. Again, social distancing will be placed at appropriate areas while waiting for the diving boards and lily pads. Rules of only one person on a lily pad at a time will be enforced, and the lily pads will be cleaned and sanitized prior to opening and within and between sessions. So there will not be a regular cleaning after each and every person. That's not possible to do that, but we will take care of as much as we can in that hour between. So a little bit of this is patrons kind of looking after their own health and safety as well, and we appreciate any efforts they'd make to help us with that. Children aged 13 and under must be accompanied by an adult at all times, and adults are responsible for monitoring their children to ensure social distancing on the play structures and fish slides. So we will not have staff that'll be making sure that's taking place. We will trust the parents to be able to monitor and maintain that and help us out. Again, staff members separate from lifeguards will be enforcing social distancing. Lifeguards will still be guarding and watching those that are in the water as they normally do, and they're required to do so. So we will have other staff that will be monitoring social distancing. Groups and individuals not practicing social distancing can be given one warning. If there's any additional complaints or warnings, they can be asked to leave Aquaventure, and again, we will not give any refunds. And all Aquaventure chairs will be removed, and patrons can bring their own chairs if they like in to the facility, but we will not be having any of our outdoor chairs out there. Concessions. Outside food will continue to be prohibited. Concession staff will offer prepackaged food and drinks only. If you want to get into more details on that, PJ, our Aquaventure manager, she can help answer some of the specifics on that. But still, patrons can bring their own drinking water if they so choose. Cashiers will have face masks at all times and will be practicing social distancing, and all surfaces will be cleaned and sanitized prior to opening between sessions, and if time permits, staff will clean tables after use. Within the concession stand itself, it'll be cleaned regularly, and we'll have staff that will be handling different duties so that we can keep things separate as well. So we have more detailed procedures, what I would call internal procedures, but I tried to highlight some of those that are the most applicable, I think, in my opinion, to our patrons that would like to use Aquaventure. So I think in concluding, I know it's a difficult decision, and it's certainly a difficult decision in most communities to open a facility like Aquaventure. You have a management component of that, how easy or difficult that is to manage it. You certainly have a cost aspect to what it does cost to open it. And then there's also the quality of life aspect that you have to look at too, as to providing an amenity and trying to balance all those things out. So I wanted to try to present, and staff worked hard to really put a lot of this information together so that we could really give you the full picture of what you're looking at here. And this is essentially an expenditure, and this is a significant expenditure. So we would just like the council support, and if you so choose to do that, which is why we're asking you this evening to consider that. As far as a staff recommendation, that's a tough one. I don't know that I can sit here and recommend either way. If you look at it from a financial standpoint, you know, it probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but at the same time, there is a community quality of life aspect of this that's important to offer to the community. So depending on how you look at it and balancing all those things out, you know, that's part of the conversation that I think we want to have tonight, and we'd certainly be happy to answer any questions that you might have as we try to consider this and do the best we can for the citizens of Norfolk.
So Andy, I may have missed it, but when would opening day be?
June 22nd is the target date to open. That will give us approximately 2 weeks to get the vessel filled, get everything tested, making sure there's no leaks, everything's working, getting our lifeguards trained. We have to do, I think, 3 different training sessions with our staff, and that's both lifeguard staff and the other staff to do some training.
The reason I asked, because it is such a short season and weekends are so important for what limited revenue we're going to be able to get off of it. Is there any way that, rather than doing the 22nd, we could open on the 20th, on Saturday the 22nd, and get the weekend, or Saturday the 20th, and get the weekend traffic?
What I think I would say is, if we can open it sooner than the 22nd, and we feel we can do that safely and still make sure everybody is trained and everything is done that needs to be done, we will do so if we're able to do that.
All right.
But until we start the training, get things going, you know, with a facility like this, there could be there could be something that's leaking, you don't know, and you have to get those things fixed. Barring any, you know, if everything just goes perfect and smooth, we may be able to open up a little bit early on that. But I don't know that we can really feel comfortable making that promise right now. But if we can, we will do so.
As long as you can give it a shot, that would be good. Other question I had, not question, I guess really just a statement. At the end of the day, I mean, I know we're going to do everything that we can do to provide a safe environment. At the end of the day, though, I do believe it's the citizens' responsibility as to whether they do want to come into Aquaventure or not. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, it's not really, I guess anything's possible, but it's really not financially possible or really feasible or even practically feasible that after somebody uses a restroom, after somebody washes their hands at a sink, after somebody uses one of the changing areas, after anybody touches something, if that's the concern, it's not possible to do that after each use. So in some regards, yes, it is, you know, folks looking after their own safety. We will provide a minimum of what we're going to do, but anything above and beyond that, it's just whatever you're comfortable with.
Right. Thank you.
And that would be similar to other public facilities like our playgrounds and sporting fields.
Correct.
So the intended closing date would remain the same in mid-August or thereabouts?
Yeah, you know, that date just really depends on when we lose our staff, depending on school starting, and those kinds of things really hurt us as far as being able to provide the staff. You know, due to the special circumstances, you know, there may be the possibility we can look at some limited openings or, you know, weekend openings or something, but a lot of times we don't know that until we get a little farther into the season to find out what the school schedules are and who's going to still be around for us to do that.
Checking in now, you'll have a lot of young people working, and I know if you follow social media a lot, there's people that are upset because they have to wear a mask. There's going to be people upset that have to sign their name and give a phone number because of the tracing COVID back, if somebody would come up with it. Is there somebody going to be, do you have to put somebody in place there to kind of watch out for the situations like that? Or
You know, on a regular basis, PJ is there. We'll have our other permanent full-time city staff available as needed to help out where we can. But yes, it will be up to our part-time staff to enforce those. We'll work through that with proper training. If there's problems, if there's threats or, you know, whatever would happen, I mean, our first priority is to keep our staff safe. And if we have to get law enforcement involved or other security involved, or close the facility down because it's unsafe for our staff, we'll do so. But I hope that we don't run into problems like that.
And then going to that tracing, which all the way back, hypothetical situation, if somebody would go swimming this afternoon and then go someplace later in the day and they come up with COVID and they said, well, I was swimming.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there at this time.
Mm-hmm.
So then you had to say, well, it was full capacity at 325 people. You gotta call all 325 of those people. Did I understand that right?
My understanding is that if you were there at Aquaventure at that same time period as the individual that they've interviewed who tested positive, yes, they will call all those names, which is why we will be recording name, phone number, time in and out. So if you're not on that list of within the time period, then
Yeah.
they won't contact you, is my understanding of how that works.
Sounds like it could be a logistic nightmare as far as getting everybody contacted.
Well, yeah, it's the health department, that's what they do.
This is
So-
what people should realize. This was not a quick or easy decision. And you saw the list of communities that chose not to open their facilities at all because of some of the difficulties and complications. But we've had several conversations about this. I think there's been 2 or 3 subcommittee discussions about this. And we wanted to see a plan to both provide this community service while doing it in a safe and responsible manner. And that's going to take some responsibility on the part of citizens who want to use this service as well. So I think that's kind of an appeal we can make to the community if we should decide to move forward and open the facility. It's going to take a partnership. And while all of these things seem onerous and burdensome, it is the new environment we're living under right now, and there are requirements that come from our public health department through the state-directed health measures. And if we want to have an open and accessible aquatics facility this summer, it's just what we have to do.
Andy, let's talk splash pads here for a second. Okay, we haven't addressed that yet, and we talked about it a little bit in the subcommittee meeting this morning. And it's my understanding, Pat may want to weigh in on this too, in the splash pads, there's no chlorine. That's just water, so we don't have the ability to use that as a disinfectant, I guess.
That is correct.
How do you anticipate we should treat that?
I mean, I can welcome Pat to come up and sit down, and so we can hear him at the microphone as well for that. Pat, if you wouldn't mind, you can just sit down over here. It's fresh water, but it is not chlorinated. You're correct, Councilman. But it doesn't recycle, so it's not going in and then the same water coming out. It's fresh water from city water coming out. You know, a little bit of the difference with a facility like Aquaventure and some of those is, you know, when you pay a fee to use something, when you have something that's, you know, in a limited space and you have admission, you have entrances and exits, you're under a different set of rules. Our splash pad, you could argue, and I would make that argument personally, is that it's like no different than a playground. You know, we don't sanitize the playground, we don't wipe the playground down. You know, if we want to look for more guidance specifically from the health department on something like that, specifically for the splash pad, we could certainly do so. But a little bit of that is if you're comfortable using it, you know, you can use it. If you feel like the sun and the UV rays and the water is enough to not worry about it, that's fine. But you're certainly not required to use it. You know, you can
Personal
avoid it.
decision on the part of the citizen.
Personal decision. If that's, I don't know, Pat, if you want to weigh in on your thoughts on the
That's
splash
pretty
pad.
accurate. It is gonna be treated pretty much like a playground. You know, it's recommended, you know, we're not turning our fountains on for drinking water. Haul in your own water. The recommendation would be to bring hand sanitizer, so when you're done, you can clean your hands off and, you know, just, you gotta take personal precautions. There'll be, warning signs up there kind of stating this kind of stuff, but it is pretty much like a playground. And that's kind of how we're treating it. We've got to have the right signage up. We've got to sanitize that more often than we would do other things because of that fact. And just hopefully try to keep the social distancing down, because it does get crowded in there. And we're going to have to try to limit that to that 6-foot distancing.
Sure, but if I heard you correctly, if we do open them, you will be sanitizing to the best of your ability as much as you can.
It's not gonna, you know, it's just like Andy had said earlier, we can't be there
Right.
like a bathroom attendant and we're cleaning up after every user. We will try to do it on a regular basis, and it's probably gonna be mostly the fixtures that, the water cannons that you have to touch, move them around and shoot on people, the little fish that you can spray in different directions. Those are the things that are gonna attract people's hands. And those things, we will come by and wipe them down on occasion.
Okay. Just an observation of driving around the community over the last several days when it's been very, very hot. You see kids in neighborhoods running through sprinklers, and there's 10, 12, 15 of them having a good time.
Yep.
So I don't view that as any different than what we would be trying to do with that. And and the people that I talk to, I think they feel as though that's an amenity they would like to have this summer, because everybody needs to get out and do something. So, thank you, Pat.
Pat, if Aquaventure would be closed, you know, it's already closed for about 9 months out of the year. To close it for almost like another year, what kind of effect does that have on the equipment?
Well, it's hard on equipment. You know, I used to be in appliance repair, and something sits for 6 months or something, your seals dry up, go bad. You don't know as things weather and corrode. You know, these are in kind of corrosive atmospheres because we've got acids and chlorines and stuff like that. You know, is that a reason to start up a facility that takes a few $100,000? You know, that's not a reason, but that's a detriment to a facility, mechanical facility sitting there like that with all them pumps, motors, and that not being used for a year and a half or something. Yeah, that's not good for it. You know, it's not the death wish of it, you know, either.
I know another secondary consideration that was discussed was certification of our lifeguards, and how that's an ongoing system, and we do that year to year. Water park's not open for a year. That leaves some of our potential lifeguards in a difficult situation in terms of certification. I don't know, Andy or PJ, if you want to comment on that. But I also wanted to mention swim lessons. I've gotten that question. Under this plan, we would continue to offer private swim lessons. Is that correct?
Yeah, it would be private lessons at kind of the discretion of our guards and those that are certified if they want to do so. So yeah, if you wanted to do private lessons or arrange those, you know, we can do that to the best that we can with availability.
Yeah, that's gonna be tough, because usually the line for the sign up for the swim lessons is really long. Get a pretty good group of kids that go out each year, so it'd be tough to fill that need with just private lessons.
Which I think it was important for us to, if we go forward with this, have that as an option
Yeah,
for
definitely.
families.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got a question about the expenses and revenues sheet that came up. When, in a typical fiscal, what are we usually operating at the end of the year? What's our, you know, I don't know if you mentioned that earlier on when you were going through this or not, or if I just missed that.
Yeah. Randy, did you have that number? I saw Randy come in here.
Yeah, but we have some rough guesses as to what could happen, and we could be talking reduction in fund balance of $2 million if we have our continue our normal programs.
Randy, can we have you come to the mic?
The question, Randy,
This is
was,
for the deficit,
Yeah, go ahead.
we're showing a $238,000 deficit. What do we typically run with at the end of a year?
For the pools,
Just for
we
the,
usually,
just for the
and this-
park, yeah.
Just for the water park.
it depends a lot on the weather. If you're looking at the pools, on how many people are using them. You get a hot summer, you're probably gonna cover most of your operating cost. You're never gonna touch debt service. You're just lucky to cover the operating cost. So you probably see that in a good year when we have hot weather and a lot of people go into the pool, you see the revenues coming close to equaling the expenses. At least the personnel cost would be covered. And some of those other costs up there, personnel cost is the lion's share of it. And we can cover that in a good year. And debt service is, the other big component of that, and that's being paid with occupation tax.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, I was just looking at this exact expense with no debt service being brought into the equation. So if you're figuring 25% capacity, how's that work with staff? 'Cause it looks to me like you're figuring about 20 staff members besides full-time on this sheet here, is that right? The 570 hours at 20 staff?
yeah, how many staff total does that include, PJ?
Well, I wouldn't meet all the lifeguards, so I use some of those lifeguards would be in other positions, as in the check-ins up front. I wouldn't need all the cashiers, because we're not gonna have 1,000 people days, so we would move that cashier would be, say, the locker room attendant, just as an example. So the staff that you have in a normal year would increase a little bit on a daily basis, just because of the extra, things that we're gonna have to do. But not a whole lot, because I'll be moving some staff into a different spot.
Okay, so would that mean so what do you, on a typical year, are we gonna reduce, I'm asking it because I'm just looking at this number, if we're gonna try to needle this down a little bit, because that's I believe most people who have talked to me are really excited about getting moving again and getting the park open. And the only thing that's gonna really point at you is well, what are you gonna do with that deficit? How are you gonna cover that? Is that just gonna come out of our beginning balance that we're trying to grow each year? Or is that
Yes.
gonna be something that we're gonna have to figure out how to service if this is the new norm?
No, it would just have to come out of our fund balance. And
Yeah.
like Randy was saying, we have projected, based on numbers that, we can guess at, we will be going into fund balance.
And this is something, we do keep a reserve, right? Is this something that would be under consideration to tap into cash reserves? It's a pretty special circumstance, and I think
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
why we
Well, I know it's been
maintain a
It's
reserve.
been something that we've worked on to get that reserve built up. That's been one of the major goals over the last 5 years, and these guys have done a great job getting that
Right.
built up. So I'm looking at this, so 10 hours a day is what most is. I'm not trying to nickel and dime it, but if you take 2 hours out either way, you're talking about $64,000 difference
Mm-hmm.
in, it doesn't take long with 20 steps. So if we're only open 7 hours, and is that, if you take that to an 8-hour day, that reduces that 319 by 64K.
But I believe they're there, that's just the opening hours. You do have staff there before and after.
The
Yeah, I'm
hours-
saying with an 8-hour day, because
Yeah.
you're only talking to being open total 7 hours. with
That's for when
concessions.
patrons can come in.
Yeah, so if
So-
you go 8, so you have to be open an additional 3 hours.
So 3.5 hours for each session, plus an hour in between, so that's
Okay,
8.
So 8, and
But then you do have before and after. So you have to open the facility, you have to close the facility. They will do cleaning at the end of the day as well.
Mhm.
Now, are you not required to have so many lifeguards per the size of the vessel, correct?
Correct, you are required.
Gotcha. It's not based on
No,
capacity.
it's based on the size of the vessels when they're there.
On our 2 sessions that we have planned, is this a first come, first serve? Are they taking appointments, or people just gonna be waiting to be the first ones?
We tried as best we could to keep that red number where we could, so it is first come, first serve. So, you know, it's not like you'll be calling ahead. We won't be taking appointments if you're there and you're waiting because you know this is going to be opening up, then you're in line. And then if you want to come out and go right back in, then you'll wait in line and you'll pay again. And if you can't get back in again because there's other folks that want to get in ahead of you, then that will happen. But we're not taking any appointments, so this will just be first come, first serve.
But if you're at the first session, can you come back to the second?
Not, you can. You got to pay again.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Shane, I don't have the exact number, but I think that deficit number last year, and Sheila, you may know, was something in the low 40s
I know
at
it's
the end of the
always
year.
something,
It does depend on weather and everything, but
I'd agree with you. I think was the number
yeah,
we
it
had.
was close to that. Year before that, I couldn't tell you, can't remember, but anyway.
So it still throws the other elephant that you touched on briefly on your email was, you know, all this conversation, and I'm assuming all these numbers are based on Aquaventure only? Or is there something in here for Liberty Bell also?
Liberty Bell is not proposed to
Okay, that's,
open under this scenario.
Hey,
That would be a whole nother set of plans you'd bring in to do that as well.
so I just wanted that to be known that way. So the wage number that we're looking at, the 319.2, that's based over 8 weeks with 7 weeks of operation. I struggle with it because I go, okay, is that the cost of it? And if that's the cost of it, I look back at our budgeted personnel cost for the entire park system of 2019 through 2020, and I see the entire park system, including our softball fields, our Liberty Bell,
Yeah.
Aquaventure, Memorial. I'm assuming Memorial during the football season is included in there?
We do
Is-
have our recreation budget is a little bit
Not-
separate.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
we just combined them first this year, but yeah, it's none of that.
So,
Just because it's at Memorial, it's not considered part of the.
but I look at the personnel cost based on 8 weeks there. And I see it's $319,000. And so then I look back at the budgeted personnel costs for the entire year, for the entire Parks and Recreation is 1.952 million. So you're trying to tell me that 1/6 of all our personnel cost is involved in this?
Are you looking at the budget book?
Yes,
Is it last
Okay.
year's or this year?
yes. This year, you got 2019, 2020 is budgeted of $1,952,868. And if I take 319,000, divide it by that, you know, that's a sixth. So and on top of that, I'm going, well, hell, we're basically 3 weeks that we've already lost on it. So should I actually have taken this 319 conservatively times 25% more added to it? It just seems something skewed here for me.
Yeah, and the number is a little higher because of some of the extra staff that we are bringing on. I'm trying to remember, the old number was 400 some per hour.
About $400 an hour is what, we have a spreadsheet, and PJ and Pat worked on it, and actually have the kids' names plugged in, and we have, what's our total staff, about, in the course of summer, we hire about 100 kids? 150. And working at one time, you've got 18 guards, 2 out, or 3 out.
There's 24 lifeguards, 9 aides, and then you got 3 or 4 cashiers if it's a busy day, and then about 3 or 4 concession workers.
And then we're gonna have people out front, we're gonna have, I mean, we've added, so that number went up. When we originally figured it was about $410 an hour for staffing. And so that number did go up this year when we calculated some of the other stuff that we had to put in.
Any other questions or discussion, council?
I'm assuming though that the rest of those cost figures are for the season. You know, we've got janitorial, trash, service, repairs, maintenance, because don't we have some of water and sewer, don't we have some of that regardless?
Actually,
Yes.
we did that.
We
for-
prorated that out for these, we took that out of the mix and prorated the figures down for 8 weeks for operation of the water park.
Okay.
That's like $90,000 difference in staff alone, just with different precautions for Covidian, you know, if you,
If
yeah, if you're using that.
if we have to, because as Pat was explaining, you know, when we don't need everybody, then we start flipping people around to different areas. And so this number is worst case scenario
Must
for
be, yes.
cost.
Yes.
So, I mean, yeah.
We tried to give as a worst case that we could, depending on the numbers of patrons that we could have, as we could. I mean, and then, you know, but it could be less depending on a lot of factors. So you're correct.
So if that is a, and I kind of lost my number here, Andy, but $200,000 or $300,000 loss, what was the worst case scenario on the loss for Aquaventure this year?
324.
324, yeah. So if we have a $29 million a year budget, and you're looking at $324,000 as a piece of that budget, it's not, it's 1.12%. So as we go into the summer and we're looking at how we're going to budget for next year and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah. The only other thing about that number though is if you figure that the only way we can pay for it are like maybe 2 areas. That's with the mill levy and Keno money.
Mm-hmm.
So unless you take it out of somewhere else.
Unless you cut expenses, yeah.
Yeah.
That would be unless you take it out of general fund, which.
Well, yeah, but if you're trying to operate without, you know, messing with our general fund.
Right.
Yeah.
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 But I guess I'm not suggesting that we throw that out the window, because when I look at, you know, I look at our receipts based on last week's meeting for, I don't remember if the sales tax was last week or if the Keno was last week. But I printed them both on and off, and, you know, we basically have, you know, our area of income other than services and that are Nebraska Public Power, personal property tax, sales tax, and Keno. That's really the 4 big ones, correct? So I look at the personal property tax isn't affected by COVID-19. You're gonna collect it, well, if you didn't pay on, what the hell was it, April, or 1st of April, whenever in the hell it was due, that one, the governor didn't let us get by without paying, yeah. So that one was already due. And then I look at, I look at the 1.5 cent sales tax comparison, and through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 months, we're 7.65% ahead, and we are $456,000 ahead. You know, worst case scenario, and that's saying, you know, even when I look at the worst month, which was February, which is reflection of January's income,
Mm-hmm.
or is it January sales?
2 months. They're 2 months behind.
Okay, So there was one where we were $850 a park, but on everything else, we've been running anywhere from $25,000 to $119,000 in the black for sales tax that way. And I don't see that should really change for us. And I'm not proposing that we would look at using this as a crutch to handle every year, but to offset this 324, which is actually probably about 280. That's in worst case scenario because we lost 40,000 plus or minus last year on it anyway. I'm going, I just see this is as an amenity that, I have a real tough time telling, even though LARM may be, or the insurance people may be telling us that, hey, don't do this, there's risk with everything that we do. So if you're, I like the statement earlier that, if you're really concerned about contracting this disease, then you need to stay away from these things. It's the same as, there's the same risk going out to shop or going to Menards, it's all still there. I think that we need to, I like the COVID plan that you have set on up and the parameters that we're working on around. I suspect that, we're gonna have to do probably something similar to that as we get into the fall season, because I doubt that this thing's gonna have gone away by that time, and it would not surprise me as we got into the fall that we saw some spikes. So are we going to cost us a little bit more? Yeah, it's gonna cost us like if we had a really cold summer. So
Too bad we can't quit while we're ahead, but we can't do that.
I think to that point, as Councilman Leahy said, recently sales tax receipts have been strong. There's no doubt we're going to take a hit and there's going to be an impact from the last few weeks, but there was some cushion. I think February was up 19% over the year before. March was up 3 to 4%. And the pandemic started the second half of March. So we'll start to see the impact, but it is fortunate that there was a cushion period there. And I think, it's important to remember this was not as simple as just deciding to open or not. And living under this new environment, there are many considerations we've all talked about, including safety, compliance with the mandated requirements, staffing and fiscal impacts. I do want to commend staff for putting in the work to put together what I think is a very creative, responsible plan to accomplish, I think, two things that we'd like to see: that this service, this quality of life service, be accessible to citizens this summer, and to keep everyone as safe as possible while we do it. And I think that's important, that as we all gradually re-engage in community life, it's important to the community that we make this facility accessible to citizens. Businesses, small businesses, everyone's had to get really creative over the last few weeks in how they operate in this environment, and I think this plan reflects the city doing the same and making possible, even though where some cities just said, look, this is too hard, we're not even going to deal with it. We're making a conscious decision, if we should go forward with this, to say, we think this is an important enough deal to make it accessible to citizens, and we're going to try to keep everybody safe while we do it. If we take a little fiscal impact, that's worth the cost in providing, in continuing this quality of life benefit for our citizens and signaling to the public that we're ready to re-engage
You know, I've been on the committee, and we've talked about the openings, and gave a lot of things a lot of thought today. And I'm in the risk business. I've been involved in conversations on pools since middle of April. Now, a month and a half ago, I'd say, no way, you wouldn't open anything. But, and we talk about the cost and what, sure, we're gonna lose a deficit here, but then I look at the entire Parks and Recreation budget, as Councilman Lange brought up, and we keep talking about revenue to try to meet our personnel costs. But, you know, I don't know, we mow a lot of parks, we maintain a lot of parks, we maintain a lot of baseball fields, soccer fields, you name it. I don't know how much revenue, if we ever sat down and put pencil to paper, are we making up our personnel costs? Probably not, but it is a service that we need to offer the citizens, and it's what they demand. And it's like, we just kind of have to, we'll probably hit it with the budget, but I just think it's something that the community wants. Honestly, I'm not a swimmer, but if that's what the community wants, that's what we'll do.
I think we just need to look at it as a truly a safety issue here. We're gonna be asking 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old lifeguards to do things that they shouldn't have to do, or nor, you know, be required to it. I mean, we can't control as many variables at the swimming pool as we can, say, with the library or the other ball fields. I mean, the library is one person per family and a 30-minute time limit. And taking a hit with at least a $238,000 expense this year that we can't avoid, we're gonna have a deficit this year no matter what. And then coming along with kind of like that big brother mentality of having the contact tracking also, I don't think very many people are gonna wanna go for that as well. So for me, it just comes down to safety, and just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something.
Any further questions or comments, council? Yeah, can we have you come to the microphone? Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Sharon Hartorn, and I do thank you for all the effort that you've all put in and you've all put in to consider this matter. I know it is a huge cost and it is huge. My husband is in the health profession, and he was an online medical doctor actually a year and a half ago, so he's been doing that a long time. And of course, the people who are coming to him has obviously greatly increased, and he is seeing a lot of mental health issues as a result of the isolation. I've talked to therapists who are seeing a lot of family issues that are happening because everyone's isolated, everyone's in each other's faces, and the best thing that can happen is for people to be healthy. Being outside helps people be healthy. Having recreation helps people be healthy. Vitamin D helps people be healthy, and I know it's a huge cost, but I just think the cost of not providing this service, you're going to have increase in the police force because of the kids that are hanging around town at the playgrounds who would be at the pool. I think there's going to be an increase in things that might happen as a result of not having a positive place to go, because at the water park, some kids go there who tend to be troublemakers, but it's a more controlled environment and you can kick them out if they make trouble, but they're out in public making trouble, and it's a lot less trouble they could make than if they're doing drugs somewhere else or getting involved in other harmful activities. And so I just think, in the health, profession, I think we're seeing a lot of things that are happening, and I think this would be a great opportunity for families to re-engage in healthy activities, fun activities, have something together to do as a family. It's really hard to find positive activities and places to go. You can't travel. So people who would maybe travel to have a vacation are here, and so if they could have a fun place to go with their families, I think it would really help the city. And also, all of these kids, all of the staff that are working at the water park are spending money in the city, and so you're going to have an increase in restaurants and things that are available for kids, and people that come to the water park for fun are going to spend money at the concessions, spend money at the local businesses. I do think it is going to help the sales in the businesses in the community if people have a place to go to get out of their houses. I think when they're out, they will stop at restaurants, they will stop at businesses. People are shopping, like you said, people are choosing to go to Walmart or choosing to shop. Those who are at risk need to stay home and need to be responsible. And 14 and 15-year-olds, it is a lot of responsibility to put on older teenagers, younger teenagers. But I think people are realizing, like I coached swimming this morning for the first time, and all I said was, they were standing too close together. If you guys want to be here, you need to comply. And they right away just, separated, got their distance. We were one end, one kid on each end, but they did that, but then they were still next to each other in the lane. So they had to, and they just were really willing, because everybody's willing to comply. If you want to go out, you have to follow these rules. And no one likes to be told what to do, but this is the way it is. And I think it's good. It's good for kids to learn to submit, and it's good for kids to learn to, I don't necessarily agree with all the rules that are being placed, but I have to follow them, because if I want to go out and do things, I need to follow the rules that the governor has required and recommended that we do. And so I think it's just an opportunity where everything is different, and it is a lot to ask, but I think that it's not unreasonable to ask people to comply, and if they don't want to comply, they don't have to be there. And so I think that's something that is to be considered.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. All fair points. I think that's a very good point. If we all intend to enjoy a community benefit, we all have a shared responsibility to ensure that everyone is safe as possible doing so. And that's the situation here. And unless there's further discussion or any more questions, I think it's probably time to take a vote. Any further questions or comments or discussion from the public?
Is there a motion?
Do we need to make a motion?
I think we had a motion to discuss, but we didn't necessarily have a motion to adopt the plan presented.
I'll make the motion for adoption.
Second.
Okay. Motion to adopt the plan as presented, and a second.
I would offer as part of that motion that you just allow staff, as things may or may not change with the directed health measures, regulations put out, that you allow us to just make those changes accordingly to that plan.
Okay.
I'll amend the motion in favor of your comment.
Motion second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Granquist,
Yay.
Langy,
Yay.
Merrill,
Yay.
Weeblehouse,
Yay.
Murin,
Yay.
Jackson,
Yay.
Clausen,
Yay.
File.
No.
Voting in the affirmative, Granquist, Langy, Merrill, Weeblehouse, Murin, Jackson, and Clausen. Voting in opposition, File. Motion carries.
Okay. That concludes this special meeting of the Norfolk City Council. Good evening.